Hi everybody, I'm Ness, and today I have a really fun Halloween episode for you. What's so great about Halloween? Why do millennials love Halloween? What should I be worried about on Halloween? What should I avoid on Halloween? And what are some really kick-ass Halloween stories? Let's talk about it. So Halloween is my all-time favorite holiday for like a long list of reasons. I love the freedom that Halloween has, which I think is a big part of why most people love Halloween. It's a day to be whatever you want, whoever you want, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual orientation or your disability. You get to just be whoever. If I want to be a Disney princess, I can. If I want to be the Grim Reaper, I can. I can be anything, and it's wonderful. And that's why so many people like it. It's a chance to be either more yourself or another version of yourself. And I think that's really important for self-expression. And it's also really exciting because you get to decide, who do I want to be this year? What do I want to do this year? And it's kind of a fun adventure. I also am obsessed with spooks. For example, Francis is probably my best friend. And I love Halloween movies. I love haunted houses. I think they're interesting and fascinating, but they're really, really cool because once a year you get to be scared in a really, really safe way. You get to face your fears, you get to go see the monsters, and it's in a fun way with your friends, and it's a more comfortable way. Whereas the rest of the year, I'm probably going to be scared of everything. But that's one of the things that makes Halloween so great. Is you get to be yourself, you get to face your fears, you get to experience all these new things for one day, and it's fun. And it's also a day where there's no pressure. I think if you ask most millennials what their favorite holiday is, it's going to be Halloween. Because every other holiday pretty much requires some kind of family occasion and a lot of pressure. You have to look right and say the right thing and make sure your grandma doesn't find out you're gay, that kind of thing. And it's a thing. Or make sure you don't say that thing about how, you're not in school, or make sure you don't do this, and make sure that your macaroni recipe is better than your aunt's, or she is gonna roast you for the rest of the day. That stuff. Or some people just don't have a family to go to, and it's depressing, and it's sad. Halloween is a day that you get to do whatever the hell you want, and you're celebrating it right. If you want to stay home and binge watch horror movies, do it. If you want to go to a corn maze, do it. If you want to dress up with your friends and take selfies for 6 hours and forget you were supposed to leave the house, do it. That's what's so fun about it. The other thing is that I think is important to talk about are the do's and don'ts of Halloween. Do go be adventurous. Do try new things. Do go get spooked. Do listen to the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack. I'm serious. If you're not doing that for Halloween, why? What are you doing? What you should not be doing is dressing as another ethnicity. Why? Why do you think that's a good idea? It's not. Don't dress as a disability. There is no reason that, for some reason, you think that it's hilarious to be somebody in a wheelchair for a day. It's not fun. It's not funny. And that's my point. It's wrong. It's not okay. And the thing is, you wouldn't try to understand it. You wouldn't go through that because it's terrible. Not that I'm complaining about being who I am. I'm very accepting. But I also know if I could walk and trade myself, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And seeing people try to pretend to be any sort of disability, whether it's mental or physical or whatever, it's not funny, it's not cool, you just look like an asshole. Same thing goes for pretending to be another race. When you get to have your white privilege the very next day, you're an asshole? Don't do it! Lastly, before we get to really fun, scary stories that I'm excited about, I want to talk to you about pumpkins. So there is two pretty new trends that are happening. One is the blue pumpkin, which is kind of controversial. So the blue pumpkin is for autism awareness. So you give your child like a blue pumpkin pail, and that says, "Hi, I have autism," which could make it easier when they're going to the door and maybe they're uncomfortable with saying trick or treat, or they're not, picking up on the social cues, or whatever it is. They're not behaving as the perfect, normal child. And that way the person answering the door is more gentle and, gives them the candy without requiring anything, etc. That being said, you're now giving this kid a neon sign saying, "Hi, I'm different," which as someone who can't hide their disability, I already hate that as it is. Getting extra neon signs never feels good for anyone. Secondly, it's also one of those things where why can't people just be nice to all kids? Trick-or-treating is not about adults in any way. Trick-or-treating is the one part of Halloween that is for kids and only for kids. If you don't like kids and you don't have the patience or tolerance for kids of any kind of difference that aren't the very specific kid you like, don't be the house with the porch light on handing out candy. Be the house that's quiet. Be the house that's dark. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see why we have to make, the victim have to constantly be the one that's changing things or trying new things. We could just be nice to all kids. I don't see why that's a thing. That being said, in our society sometimes things just are a thing. And if this pail could help your kid have a better time, so more parents are nicer to your child, I can also understand wanting to have it. It's just, I think, sad that we are in a world where we have to want to have things like that, or feel the need that we need those things, because people aren't just going to be nice to children for a thing devoted to children. The last pumpkin type is the teal pumpkin. So for this, you put one outside of your house, and you can also do a registry thing with your neighborhood. I believe you can do it online. Basically, having a teal pumpkin outside of your house means that you offer treats that aren't food related. And I actually have a few examples. So, we have my teal pumpkin over here, and we have a bunch of examples of really cheap things that you can do to have other types of pails and options. So we have these little spider rings, and a bunch of really cute felt stickers that are bats and pumpkins and ghosts. Glow sticks, because I swear that is every child's favorite thing. It's also my favorite thing. I don't think I ever grew up. We also have glow-in-the-dark creepy eyes that are also surprisingly really gooey and squishy, and they feel gross, and I love it. Play-Doh, and various different types of putties, because that seems to be a thing, is that slime and putty and stuff. Different other letterings and stickers and stuff. Little cars. Now this one's a little bit harder because getting a bunch of these in singles would be kind of difficult. But sometimes they come in little packs of a bunch, and you can still get those for $2. And lastly, you could do little paints. What's cool about these, they all separate from each other. So you have a tiny little paint. They come with 20 different paints in one pack. You separate them, each kid gets one little bottle. You never know what color you're going to get. That's kind of cool. And all of these things cost $1 or less. And all of these things could easily be found at any grocery store. They could be found at the dollar store, probably in more of a bulk. And it makes it easy for kids with food allergies, or maybe for kids that just aren't into sweets. And I think a lot of people see these kinds of things and these differences and these changes and they think, oh God, I gotta do things differently. And it's a whole problem for you somehow. But you don't. There's no reason why you can't also have a pail that passes out candy. You can have both. Nobody's saying that you should replace all trick-or-treat baskets with these baskets because of food allergies. But why not also add a second basket? Why not give those kids the option? And that way, everybody gets to celebrate. Everybody gets to have fun. Nobody's changing anything or taking over anything. Everybody just gets a little more freedom. I think that's a really sweet option and something to consider. Now that we've covered all of that, though, I think it is time for some really awesome scary stories. So all of these stories are from one big book of horror stories, each based around a different month or holiday. And so the first one we're going to start with is January. And this one is by Maxwell Pierre DeMarco. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Frederick Coltrane reporting live from Times Square as we are less than 15 minutes away from bringing in the big double 20, 2020. And tonight we at Channel 15 will be doing our best to pay tribute to this last decade by interviewing some of 2019's biggest pop culture colossuses right here in America's City of Dreams. God damn it. Of course he's here. If he'd been speaking aloud, Michael Smith would have literally spat out those words. The din and clamor of the surrounding crowd was deafening if the voice of Channel 15's most popular reporter still found its way to his ears. Frederick's unceasingly vivacious tone as he welcomed his first guest to his booth, wherever the hell it was set up, served as a grating sort of white noise underneath the already overwhelming din, prompting Michael to briefly tighten the hood of his jacket in a fruitless attempt to shield his ears. 28 fucking years, and that godforsaken infection of his hasn't changed in the slightest. Leaning back against the wall in bitter resignation, Michael let his hood loosen as a spiteful "ch" escaped his lips. How do dime a dozen pricks like him get paid for these jobs, flapping their gums over events they have no relevancy to? Any one of them could be swapped out for another, and their commentaries would be exactly the same. Absent-mindedly running a hand over his torn jeans, Michael's eyes scanned the crowd beyond the secluded alcove he had been pushed into. He had hoped to catch a glimpse of that damned reporter's booth, to receive some sort of solace in seeing his oblivious tormentor aged past his prime. But Michael found that his efforts were unrewarded, barely able to see past the first row of pedestrians from a spot on the cold concrete. If the masses genuinely consider these reporters celebrities, people who have earned the right to be where they are, and that their world should be trusted over that of their competitors. Pulling his knee close to his chest in an attempt to block out the cold, Michael let a raspy sigh. Or at the very least, my mother saw it that way. Becoming lost in his thoughts, Michael's eyes slowly closed, the sounds of the surrounding crowd fading into the back of his mind as he let out a slow breath. I wonder how you'd feel, Frederick, if I told you that your voice was my biggest tell that a beast walked my childhood home. A broken file hag who watched your late-night programming while she was chugging wine or shooting heroin. Would you apologize, Frederick, knowing that you kept me awake until 3 a.m., praying to God that she'd fallen asleep on the couch and wasn't about to barge through that door? Do you even have the emotional range to express sympathy for a lesser man, or feel ashamed for how your career has affected me? As Michael mulled over his thoughts, he was unaware of the nearby sound of chattering accompanied by approaching footsteps. It could be argued that these weren't very noteworthy sounds. Despite how tightly packed the surrounding crowd was, the people who comprised it were constantly shifting around. But when the footsteps stopped, the sound did, in fact, reach Michael's ears, and the sound was far, far more out of place. Zip! The hell! Michael's eyes snapped open and he turned towards the source of sound. Oh my God! He saw the other man almost immediately, and he promptly recoiled in disgust. Jesus Christ, are you fucking insane? Show some sort of modesty, for fuck's sake! Say, what's up? No one says you gotta look at it. The man clipped back, continuing to urinate in the corner of the alcove. I'm not looking at it, you prick! Michael seethed, instinctively shifting further away as a few rogue drops of urine rebounded off the wall. I'm looking at you, because you're pissing on the goddamn wall barely 5 feet away from me. Oh, sure, like I'm gonna take the feelings of some hobo in a crap-stained jacket into account, the man snapped. You do what you have to do to keep your place out here, buddy. Plus, I thought you were fucking sleeping from that pathetic little bottle you were in. So it's a crime to take a moment to think? Michael barked, grabbing an honest stain on his sleeve as if to present it to the man before him. And this is dirt, not fucking shit, you asswipe. Whatever, you goddamn bum. Finishing his business, the man zipped up his jeans before turning to face Michael. Maybe think about getting a job before lecturing people on the street, huh? I've been trying to, you. Michael cut himself off as the man turned and began walking away. Hey, I'm talking to you, bastard! Ah, go fuck yourself, man, the man shouted back before disappearing into the surrounding crowd. You. Michael wanted to call more insults after him, but he found he didn't have the resolve. Taking a harsh breath in and out through his nose, he once more slouched against the wall, the nauseating smell of fresh urine filling his nose. Yeah, great idea coming down here, Michael. You want to feel like a regular Joe again? How about instead you get shoved into an alcove and forced to smell some jackass's urine for the rest of the night? Sounds real fucking good to me. Michael's eyes drifted to the surrounding concrete, letting out a second shh as he looked over the litter surrounding him. Not that the space was by any means clean beforehand. With nothing else to do, his gaze moved over several discarded wrappers and no less than 3 used condoms, finally settling on an empty syringe in the corner to his left. A single, gruff sort of chuckle escaped his lips at the sight. It's like some sick joke. I clean myself up, come here to have fun, and yet I still wind up right back with the filth of my past. Fucking poetry. Tilting his head back against the cold wall, but leaving his legs extended in front of him, Michael closed his eyes once more. The voices of Frederick Kaltschreiber and whatever flash in the pan celebrity he was interviewing finding their way back to his ears. Okay now, we could go on about your current tour's all-night errors, but I think we know what your fans want to know, Frederick began, his voice actually making Michael cringe in silent hatred. Aristo, as you enter into a brave new world, having come from rags to riches in less than a year, what would you say was the greatest moment of this past decade? Oh, the greatest moment? Ooh, man! Michael couldn't place the voice that responded. The 2 possible names Frederick provided him didn't ring a bell, and the heiress Aristo's voice was pretty generic, though probably on the younger side. Well, Freddie, feel free to call me biased, but I gotta say, for me personally, it'd be hitting 900 million views on my royalty music video, you know? That's where I got my start, where I was discovered and made that first leap into the rap game. And to see it get so much support, even now when I'm rocketing up the charts, I'm just saying, it's not living in a mansion that's making me royalty, you know? Michael could barely stop himself from laughing out loud. Yeah, Freddie, it's not the mansion. It's the millions of viewers who make it possible for him to keep said mansion. A huge smile spread across his face, but Michael's eyes were wild as his hate mixed with absolute disgust. Hey, Frederick, how about you ask the opinion of someone with less than $1 billion fucking dollars, huh? In fact, let's start with me. The most significant moment of this decade would probably be, oh yeah, losing my house. Thanks for caring about the little guy, you manufactured assholes. Michael pounded his fist into the wall, not even flinching from the pain of impact. He screamed into the surrounding crowd. Every fucking one of you are the same! Celebrity shits, false idols to a herd of goddamn sheep. You expect to worship for nothing! He didn't expect Frederick to hear him, but he no longer cared. Getting to his feet, Michael extended his middle finger into the air, planting it over the crowd as though trying to spot the reporter's boot. Here's my thing, you smug vapid asshole. Come take it, and feel free to shove it up your fucking... Holy shit, shut up. Michael felt a shock go through his body as he was acknowledged, his extended arm faltering slightly as he looked towards the source of the voice, his eyes settling on a raven-haired woman looking his way with disgust. Excuse me? Michael managed. The faintest tinge of embarrassment lingered in the back of his mind, but his anger wouldn't allow him to simply back down. What are you trying to prove, huh? The woman questioned him, her eyes narrowing behind her round glasses. You're shouting over a crowd of people at the top of your lungs, and what? Some celebrity who don't give a shit about you, has no idea you're here, and probably won't even hear you? Letting out a short, spiteful laugh, Michael pulled his arm back to his side. Any semblance of embarrassment now drowned by anger. I don't care if I those bastards hear me or not. I've been sleeping in a fucking box for a month. I've earned the right to speak my mind this time. Earned the right? To Michael's astonishment, the woman laughed. She continued, what do you know about earning something? You're only homeless because your doppelganger kicked you out of your penthouse? Michael gritted his teeth as he felt a vein pop in his head. I was an aspiring writer. He seethed, his tone cold. Exactly, the woman stated, crossing her arms. And now you're just some bum who's failed at life, blaming people who've actually made it for your own shortcomings. What if you give them a world that makes you think they owe you any sort of acknowledgement? Michael's mouth curled into a snarl. You've got some goddamn nerve talking like that to a man like me. Michael took a slow step toward his provoker, his eyes narrowing in slits. What makes you think I'm sane enough that I won't pull a knife on you right now? Besides that you didn't do shit to a guy who practically pissed on you? The woman's tone remained confident, unfazed by Michael's question. You seem to have enough sanity left to understand human decency, and no decent member of society would hurt a woman carrying a life. Michael hesitated. A life? His eyes shifted downwards, finally processing that the woman's stomach was noticeably bold, and all at once the emotions his fury had been holding back rushed over him. Horror at what he'd been threatening to do, what he might actually have done had he possessed a weapon, and shame at his pointless outburst washed over him. He heard the harsh realization of truth in the woman's words. Taking a step backwards, Michael stared down at his shoes as he struggled to find his words. I'm sorry. I should have thought before doing any of this. Yeah, you should have, the woman agreed, though her tone softened a bit. Retreating back to the wall of the alcove, Michael slowly sank down to the ground, the woman watching him all the while. If it means anything, I can promise you'll be a better parent than my own mother was. Thank you, I suppose, the woman replied awkwardly, not entirely sure where the conversation was going. The two of them stared at each other for a while, not knowing what to do next. After a few seconds, the woman sighed, reaching in her pants pocket for her wallet. Look, outburst aside, in the end, you're just a guy who's down on his luck. She pulled a 20 out of her wallet. Maybe you can replace the old jacket or something. Keep your money, Michael spoke flatly, looking off the side. You're right. These people don't owe me. I've failed and I have no one to blame but myself. Hey, come on. There's something left for you, right? She hesitated, then returned her wallet to her pocket. You survived a month? What's a job you can do? Nothing. But I don't want your money and I don't need your pity. Pulling his knees to his body, Michael let out a snort. I tried every small-time job I could have after I was fired. I tried being a cashier to a YouTuber. I got canned my second night at Mayhem PM for handing out the wrong change, and I only got one view on my video, some stupid kid who thought commenting, haha, eat my poop, was oh so hilarious. I see, the woman acknowledged, not knowing what else to say. For a moment it seemed like she was going to turn away and end the conversation, but then, after a few more seconds, she let out an exasperated sigh, shaking her head. No, you know what? I'm not leaving you here like this. Walking over to stand over Michael, she looked down at him with a determined look in her eyes. Come on, get up. My friend runs a gas station just a few miles from here. I'm going to help you get back to your feet. She offered her hand to him, managing a slight smile. My name's Margaret, by the way. What's yours? Michael merely stared up at her. Eventually also managed to smile, but his was not meant to be friendly. I never had friends, Margaret. Not at school, not at work. Starting now won't do me any good. Oh my God! Margaret exclaimed, throwing her hands up in exasperation. No wonder you're on the street. You're so wrapped up in self-pity you won't accept help when it's literally handed to you. If you really want to help me, Michael began, ignoring her words, the best thing you can do is raise your child to the very best of your abilities. The first time since they started talking, it was Margaret's turn to falter. Why? What does that have to do with anything? Michael took a deep breath in and out. It lets me know that somewhere there's a mother who loves her child, who cares for them, who sees potential in them so they can enter into the real world with confidence, with someone to stand behind them as they fight for their dreams. If you want to help me, please, give your child the life I was denied. Margaret looked down at Michael, her expression unreadable. You still haven't told me your name. Michael considered stretching one of his legs a little. I'm Michael. It was the only name a mother could think of. Margaret hummed. She studied him for a long time. Finally, reluctantly, she slowly turned away. Take care, Michael. I hope things get better for you. With that, she walked away, making her way back into the crowd. Michael watched as the surrounding pedestrians shifted back into place behind her, the path she'd initially made through the crowd quickly disappearing. It was barely 10 seconds before she too vanished into the oceans of faceless individuals. Michael watched the shifting people, feeling a nagging tightness in his chest. Oh, what the hell was I thinking? He thought. I was just offered a job. I could have... Almost immediately his train of thought came to a halt. No, that wouldn't have done anything for me. I would have lost it in a week and then I'd be right back where I am. Working for a gas station salary won't buy me a home. Pushing off his hood, Michael leaned his head back against the wall as a feeling of emptiness came over him as he once more began to fade into his thoughts. The roar of the crowd suddenly rose. Michael almost looked back at them to see what was happening, but he quickly put two and two together. Moments after, his thoughts were confirmed by Frederick and his guest just before their voices were finally lost to the din. Whoa, hold on a minute, Aristo. It looks like we'll have to put this interview on hold, Frederick exclaimed. Oh, man! Aristo cheered, the sound of his hands coming together barely audible over the sudden increase of chatter. All right, my royals! Let's count this down together! 10! And then it was silence. Michael froze. In confusion, he stuck a finger in his ear and wiggled it in an attempt to regain his hearing. No luck. The world remained as soundless as death. Michael looked back at the crowd. What the hell? His once colorful surroundings had turned bleak gray, and they were frozen. Every single one of the bustling crowd was still, expressions of mirth on their faces, their mouths stuck, forming the letter N of 9. It was as if time had ceased to progress. Slowly getting to his feet, Michael could see a few individuals farther in the crowd stuck midair, having apparently jumped in joy as the countdown began. In stunned silence, Michael took a shaky step towards the petrified masses. His single footstep echoed as though the sky was the ceiling of a cathedral. What the fuck is going on? Michael managed. He wasn't expecting an answer, but at the moment he needed reassurance that he hadn't lost his own voice, as the sounds of others around him had. Reaching out to a man frozen close to him, Michael hesitantly touched his shoulder. No response. And upon closer examination, he realized that his vision wasn't just monochrome. The entire crowd had gone pale as freshly fallen snow. His own face went white in fear, and a broken laugh escaped his throat. No. What the fuck is this? What the fuck is happening to me? Michael held his hand in his hands. His hand that had touched the man's shoulder was especially cold against his face. This can't be real. This can't be real. With a wordless examination of anger and fear, Michael shoved the frozen man aside, causing him to topple with a statue to the concrete. Pushing his way through the crowd, Michael's gaze wildly darted around him, hoping that some means of escape from the anomaly he'd been engulfed by would present itself. His movements grew more frantic as he shoved deeper and deeper into the crowd, forcefully moving aside men, women, and children alike as he maneuvered through what felt like an endless expanse of humanity. What the hell's happening to me? Michael demanded of everyone, and no one, his scream echoing into oblivion. Have I gone insane? Has this entire night been in my mind? With no direction, he's pushed further and further into the crowd, practically throwing his inanimate obstructions to the ground. Their faces and features blended together until only the resistance his hands faced before forcing them aside told him he was still moving forward. After what could have been anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour of maneuvering through frozen New Yorkers, Michael couldn't take it anymore. His legs failing him, he fell to the ground on his knees, holding his head in his hands. This is... His voice failed him, his thoughts refused to form coherent words. He rocked back and forth, staring wide-eyed at the concrete as he tried in vain to make sense of this impossible phenomena. Why is this happening? How is this happening? I don't understand. You will. Michael's heart skipped a beat. The terror he hadn't felt in years suddenly came down like a tidal wave upon him. It wasn't for the same reason I had been then, but the instantaneous flood of fear was exactly the same. Scrambling to his feet, Michael spun his way and that, looking for the source of the voice, and then there it was, phasing through the surrounding crowd like a phantom, gliding towards the makeshift path Michael had created as he forcefully moved through the masses was a looming figure clad in a dark gray cloak. Dark feathered wings extended from the stranger's back, remaining folded even as he seemed to levitate towards Michael. The figure's hooded face lifted to look directly at Michael's, black mist seeping from below the fabric as the faintest glimpses of a humanoid mouth could be seen. Its voice was low and raspy as it lifted a wrinkled hand to beckon to its quarry. Come here, Michael. No, Michael screamed. He whipped around and began to throw himself farther into the crowd. Sweat flew from his face as his instincts took over his mind. He punched, clawed, and rammed people aside as he desperately tried to escape. At first, it almost seemed he could get away, but with every individual he removed from his path, the one that came next was suddenly harder to move. Get out of my way, you bastards! He demanded. His arms strained to their limits as he shoved person after person aside, the frozen figures now feeling like stone statues blocking his path. Get out of my way! With a primal screech, he threw a man to the ground, prepared to do the same to the next when he saw a figure he recognized. Margaret? It was indeed the same woman from before, frozen mid-step with a thoughtful look on her face. Michael's heart was beating out of his chest. He knew he needed to run, escape from the thing that was after him. Sorry, I need to read that again. He knew he needed to run, escape from the thing that was after him. But being confronted with the face he knew after carelessly throwing aside so many indistinguishable people made him freeze up, if only for a second. God damn it, what am I doing? Snapping back to reality, Michael turned to his side, intent to carve out a path around Margaret's immobile form. Clink. And just like that, the chase ended. Two glowing purple shackles clamped down on Michael's legs, throwing him off balance and toppling him to the ground. Catching himself with his hands, the street scraped Michael's palms and he let out a cry from the stinging pain. Beyond him, the cloaked figure finally reached him, its full towering body now revealed in its entirety. No more running, Michael, the creature stated coldly. This will be much easier if you accept your fate. I'm sorry? Michael stammered, trying and failing to roll onto his back, instead opting to look over his shoulder. Michael stared up at the being with terror in his eyes. What do you want from me? What are you going to do to me? The figure was silent at first, its dark wings shifting slightly. Then it raised a hand and snapped its fingers. On your feet, Michael Smith. Like paper in a fireplace, the shackles clamped tight around Michael's legs dissipated in a wave of purple fire, leaving a painful imprint in the skin where once they had been. Not wanting to provoke the being, Michael got to his feet, wincing as he pushed himself upright. Turning to face the thing before him, Michael asked the first question he could get out. What are you? Beneath the hood, the figure's mouth curved into a smile. Not what? I am a fully sentient individual, am I not? Bringing its hands together, the figure glided closer to Michael, causing him to take a step back and turn. As for who I am, in your tongue I am known as Azrael. Azrael? Michael stammered, backing further away and promptly knocking into a frozen man behind him. Azrael simply nodded in response, once more going silent, realizing it was waiting for him to speak. Michael tried to gather his thoughts despite his increasing fear. Azrael, the angel of death. That is correct, Azrael replied plainly. And is it plausible that you understand what that entails? Michael wanted to run. He wanted to scream. He wanted anything but to be in the situation he was in now, but something in his mind told him there was no escape. So instead, he tried to justify it to himself. This must be some kind of hallucination, he muttered. I must have fallen into some kind of comatose state, and now I'm trapped in my mind. Azrael let out a dark chuckle. Michael's eyes snapped up to his partially concealed face, watching as Azrael bared its teeth in a wide smile. Ah, into the first stage already. I only hope we reach acceptance sooner rather than later. Michael's eyes narrowed after running from this being. His fear had clouded his mind, but now the creature's apparent snark of the situation was getting on his nerves. Well, I'm sorry for not instantly believing that I'm stuck in some bizarre purgatory talking to a goddamn angel, Azrael! And on to stage 2 already, Azrael smirked. To think, we no longer even need his wisdom to predict how you mortals will behave. Oh, fuck me. Michael's eyes twitched as he realized what had just happened. Taking a sharp breath through clenched teeth, he swallowed his anger, adapting a comparatively neutral tone. Fine. You've got me figured out. So, why are you here? His smirk fading, Azrael tilted his head, watching Michael with apparent curiosity. Eventually, he made a quiet noise of understanding. I suppose it would not be totally obvious given my current orders, so... Very well. Slowly, Azrael lifted an open palm into the air, causing a neatly rolled scroll to appear. Lowering the scroll, Azrael looked at Michael expectantly. You are aware of the crisis plaguing your planet, yes? Crossing his arms, Michael stifled a snort. Which one? Very amusing, Michael. I recommend keeping an outlook during the rest of these proceedings. Though his tone indicated mirth, Azrael's expression was now firmly neutral. The Lord is displeased with the current state of his world, Michael. There is an increasing amount of hatred, destruction, distrust, and greed throughout all civilizations. And he has been struggling to learn why until recently. Now he has realized the solution to this discourse is deceptively simple. And though he initially did not wish to take such actions, believing he'd already provided humanity with sufficient solutions, he has decided it is time to take a more direct approach. Despite a nagging feeling of unease, Michael's facade of control remained in place. In regards to what? He asked, raising an eyebrow. What else, Michael Smith? What else constantly demands more space, removing the beautiful environments he has lovingly crafted for you? What other beings demand shelter, resources, and the means to acquire them, and lash out at those with even the smallest chance of threatening those constants? Who else but humanity demands that all children be given a loving home, yet breed so frequently and without restraint that their young are discarded and forgotten, with only the smallest hopes of finding true safety and love again? Slowly the pieces began falling together. An equal mix of fear and outrage filled Michael's mind, and his dramatic clash of emotions were conveyed in his tone. So, let me get this straight. God, the all-loving Heavenly Father, has you going around and killing us at random to stop overpopulation? Azrael let out a light-hearted laugh. Of course not, Michael. His mouth curved into a smile. Just the ones who are already forgotten. Michael's blood went cold. Excuse me. Azrael cut him off. You know exactly what I'm saying. On the dawn of the new year, I visit those no longer remembered by their peers, and erase them from this world. As Azrael explained, he slowly floated closer. And Michael, believe me when I say this approach has worked very, very well already. That can't be. Michael protested, his tone flat even as he began sweating once more. I only became homeless last month. I had coworkers and my mother. You said it yourself, Michael. You never had friends. You had acquaintances who forgot you the moment you walked out the door. And as far as your mother, well, even putting aside that she really thought about you as it was. Unrolling the scroll, Azrael looked over its contents, even as he continued to advance on the trembling man. Ah, yes, here we are. It seems her years of addiction finally caught up with her. She died just minutes ago from a heroin overdose. Michael broke. He burst into laughter. He roared with it clutching his stomach as he practically began wheezing out his vocalizations. After all the terror she put me through, after all the screaming and ranting and abuse, finally a fucking hag got what's coming to her. How goddamn fitting. Serves the old bitch right. That washed up chunky can burn in hell. My. Clearly your sentiments of you have been mirrored in your adult life. Azrael mused, coming to a stop as he rolled the scroll. But I would pay attention to the matter at hand if you do not wish to join her. Michael stopped short. Hold on, what? He looked at Azrael in confusion. Has it even crossed your mind why I've bothered to tell you all this? Azrael questioned, the scroll dissipating into a small ball of flame. Why, it brought us to a place to talk, as opposed to striking you dead when the countdown began. Michael struggled to reply, but found he had no words. I am the angel of death, Michael, but that does not make me a killer by heart. Azrael stated plainly, tapping his fingers together. And our Lord knows that all too well. That is why, if I so choose, I may elect to grant my charges one final chance to prove their worth, to show me they deserve to walk on God's green earth and help restore his faith in his creations. Suddenly, Azrael darted forward, now looming over Michael, his arms crossed as he looked down on the homeless man like a disapproving father. All your life, Michael Smith, you neglected your potential. You've thrown aside any chance at redemption and scraped by on the bare minimum, until finally you found yourself forgotten and broken on the streets of the city. A rush of incomprehensible sounds flowed from Michael's mouth as he stared wide up at Azrael, backing up against the frozen pedestrian behind him in fear. But you're gonna give me a chance. For one reason only, Azrael stated with a snap of his fingers. He vanished, reappearing back where he'd been moments before, rushing Michael, no longer looming quite as threateningly. And I believe that you already know why. There was only one thing Azrael could be talking about, and Michael knew that all too well. Slowly he nodded. I do. Extending his left hand, Azrael began to glow with purple energy. Slowly, a long marble scythe materialized in his outstretched hand as the glowing faded. He swiped once at the air before turning it to his side. Then get to it, Azrael ordered, hitting the hilt of his weapon against the concrete. Prove to me you have a reason to live, or face your greatest fear. Almost immediately, Michael's thoughts became a blur, trying to find any viable reason he should be allowed to live. It's so easy, he exclaimed, clapping his hands together. It's you. With you appearing to me, I'm living proof that angels and God exist. I'm the only one who's figured out the truth of life after death. To Michael's dismay, however, Azrael simply laughed. You and countless true people of faith, Michael. The Lord does not discriminate regarding what beliefs give mortals peace. Azrael dismissed. If I spare your life, the memory of our encounter will be erased. The justification of your survival must be from your own hands. For fuck's sake, Michael seized, but quickly managed to get himself under control. Whoa. What about Margaret? She'll remember me. She'll forget you mere seconds from now, Azrael smirked, his words caught using Michael to Azrael smirked, his words causing Michael to flinch. She may potentially think of you briefly when your child succeeds in their career of choice, but You will never see her again. If you had accepted her offer, then perhaps I would not be here now. Shit! Michael's teeth began grinding together, but his overwhelming panic canceled out any potential anger he could have felt. Please, there must be something I can do. What if I pray the Lord every night? Stage 3. Azrael hummed, dark grin stretching his face. Surely, Michael, you can do better than this. No, wait. I can still think of something. Michael pleaded now, becoming truly desperate. Please, Azrael, I don't want to die. I'll do what I need to do for you. What do I need to do for you to spare me? Oh, you're actually asking? Azrael faltered, seemingly impressed. I'll admit, Michael, not many people I offer mercy think of that. Just tell me what I need to do, Michael begged, clenching his hands together. Anything at all. Well, let's see. Azrael hummed, snapping his fingers and once more returning the scroll to his hand. Keeping one hand on his side as he let the scroll hang, he looked over its contents. Well, the first and most obvious would be to swear to turn your life around. You already cleaned yourself up. You could find a job if you were willing to look. Other possibilities would be to make yourself relevant to others, and that can be done by many different methods. Finding a companion, engaging in a violent confrontation, though not necessarily deadly. Creating some kind of meaningful business or story or any... I've got it. I can do it easily. Really now? Azrael inquired, the scroll once more dissipating. And what would your choice be? That woman. Michael's tone was dull as he pointed to frozen Margaret. I have the means. Send me back and I'll kill her before the year's end. She's pregnant. They'll remember me forever. Azrael stared at Michael, his face a complete blank slate. A long, slow, still movement passed. Then finally Azrael spoke. If that is really what you choose, if you are certain. Yes, Michael confirmed flatly, staring at Margaret with dead eyes. I can't turn my life around. I've tried and failed. It doesn't matter the circumstances, I'll always fall short. Turning back to Azrael, Michael practically spat his words. You forced me to do this. Now send me back and never appear to me again. The two stood there silent as the world that surrounded them. Slowly, Azrael lifted a finger. With a snap, his body dissolved into the ether, and life returned to Michael's surroundings. His legs seemed to move of their own accord, and he took off running. 9! Michael knew what he had to do. The people he had shoved aside were groggily getting to their feet, confused about what had happened. 8! His trail through the crowd was unaltered. It would lead him right back to the same alcove he'd been secluded in all night. Michael knew it was there. He just had to get it. 7! The alcove was in sight. Michael's legs carried him faster than he thought they could. People were yelling. Children were crying from exhaustion and excitement, but he didn't care. His lips twisted into a psychotic grin as he saw his target. 6! There it was, a syringe, the same type his Antichrist of a mother had used. It lay in the corner of the alcove. He snatched it up without caution and took off running back the way he came. 5! Call me a fucking bum. Call me a failure. Have the nerve to show me meaningless pity. Michael began to laugh, his grip tightening on the syringe. After tonight, everyone in New York will know my name. 4! Hey, Margaret! Michael screamed, barreling through the crowd towards her. Eyes snapped towards him from every direction. 3! Man, what the fuck are you doing? Hey, look out! The guy has a weapon! Where the hell did he come from? 2! As if from a great distance, Michael heard their voices. Whoa, wait a sec, Frederick! Something's going on down there. What do you mean, Arista? Wait, is that man 1? Michael? Margaret turned to see him running at her. Michael, what? Do you see me now, New York? Michael screeched. My name is Michael Smith. And he closed the distance between him and Margaret, brandishing the syringe before him. Happy New Year's, you fucking bastards! All of you can burn in hell. And with that, he plunged the needle down and was engulfed in darkness. The syringe fell from his hand. His surroundings melted like thin paint running from off a canvas. He screamed. He felt himself lifted from the ground as even the street melted into a pool of incomprehensible color before being swallowed by a growing void of nothingness. Wait, no! Why? Why? Michael cried out, tears stinging his eyes as Azrael appeared before him. Did you really think I would let you kill an innocent woman? Azrael growled with heavy malice. This was your last chance, Michael Smith. Your last chance at redemption. You could have dropped that syringe and shown me you could be better. But you blamed me for the choice you freely made. You demanded that the world change for you. And now the world will move on without you. You can't do this to me, Tom. Please, I don't want to die. Michael sobbed. He tried to run, but where? He tried to do anything at all, but his body was frozen as Azrael approached him, raising his scythe to kill. As Michael's eyes followed that curved blade, the reality of it all finally hit home. This was truly the end, what he dreaded since he was a child. He was brought to face the absolute, and there was no way to bargain his way out. With a pitiful sniff, Michael hung his head, squeezing his eyes shut as he waited for the deadly slice. At the very least, I know where I'm going. And then Azrael laughed. His scythe dropped to his side, and he laughed a booming laugh. Michael looked up, watching him, unable to comprehend what was happening as his executioner's laugh echoed around him. Oh, come now, Michael. His laugh finally ending, Azrael gazed on the man with a wide smile. Did you really assume that God walks among the undead, that places like heaven and hell exist, that posthumous beings would even remotely resemble their mortal counterparts? Any words Michael wanted to say caught in his throat. The implication made him feel like he was choking. You can't be. Is it really that surprising? Azrael questioned with a smirk. I suppose humans still have much to learn about the nature of their guardians. Lifting his right hand, Azrael slowly pulled back the hood. Above his humanoid mouth, his flesh was ripped away to reveal a bloody skull, two glowing spheres of yellow light staring out of his eye sockets. Death is just that, Michael. The end of life. Whether human or God, we all face oblivion. The most we can strive for is to live the best lives we can. Raising his scythe once more, Azrael's eye sockets flare with a blinding light. And now, you are next in line to return to the unknowable, your life wasted on self-pity and squandered potential, and knowing in the end that no matter how many chances you were given, you chose to remain a failure. And with that, Azrael brought down his scythe. Excuse me, pardon me, Margaret muttered, deep in thought as she made her way through the crowd away from the homeless man. Even with so much on her mind, she made sure not to bump into anyone, so as not to endanger the life of her son in her belly. I guess some people just don't want to be helped, huh, Alan? She questioned toward her stomach, smiling as he felt a small kick. Still, I wish there was something more I could have done for him. I know Zach would have given him a chance at the gas station. She continued walking, lost in her thoughts. 10! Margaret looked up, the loud sound jolting her back to reality. 9! Oh, crap, it's done already? Margaret smiled. 8! Well, Alan, this is it. She rubbed her stomach lovingly and looked up at the large screen high above them as the last 3 seconds of 2019 displayed prominently for all to see. Your mother's first year attending the New Year's countdown. I'm so glad I could have you with me, buddy. Taking a deep breath, Margaret joined in on the countdown. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1! Happy New Year! The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, and Margaret was right there with them. In that moment, every single person in Times Square was flooded with their memories of their past decade. Margaret in particular was beaming as she reflected on all she'd done, from finally getting her first book published to meeting the love of her life, and now they were moving into a new house with their first son on the way. And it had all topped off with her finally attending New Year's right there. It felt like a dream come true. Arguably, she had everything she'd ever wanted to be the happiest person in the world. But something pulled at her, something bothered her, and she knew what it was. Turning to look towards a small alcove, she carefully maneuvered her way back through the crowd. Michael? She pushed through the final line of people, but the alcove was empty. Michael? She called again, louder this time, looking around the surrounding crowd, but there was no sign of the man anywhere. I guess he'd had enough of this place, she murmured half to Alan and half to herself. With a sigh, she turned to go, a small tugging at her lips. Take care, Michael. Here's to a new year, for all of us. And that was the last time anyone remembered the man known as Michael Smith. Our next story is for the month of May, and this one is by Brianne DeMarco. Also, is it Brianne and not like Brianne? Am I saying it right?
You are saying it right, Brianne.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That would be funny to leave in the episode. Light filtered through the trees, casting colorful shadows of the sunset past the rising mountainside. I sauntered carelessly down the narrow forested path, a bottle of peach schnapps in my hand and my sister walking beside me. The many layers of my dress hit against the tops of my boots as we walked, and I spun, watching the dark layers separate and flow around me as I turned. We were giddy and excited, a little tipsy already, and feeling the magic of the mid-spring night. The music coming from the end of the trail was just barely audible, but deep bass beats vibrated under our feet. The leaves above us rustled and a chill ran across my back. It's getting fucking cold, Willow complained, letting go of my hand to reach the bottle of schnapps. She took a swig. Much better. I laughed and grabbed the bottle back. I told you it was going to get cold. I tipped the bottle back, enjoying the warmth on my throat and in my stomach. Willow groaned dramatically. Yes, Mom. And, I continued, that you should bring a coat. Looking down at her costume, she scoffed. She was wearing a burgundy and gold lace crop top and high-waisted skirt with a handkerchief hem. It was beautiful and perfect for tonight, but made of very, very thin material. And cover all this up. Fuck that! She added, flipping her hair over her shoulder defiantly. Loose curls and tiny braids with beads and charms fell down her back. I laughed a loud guffaw that startled a group of ravens high in the trees. They flew suddenly, their wings loud as they cut through the air. My breath caught in my throat. I heard Jay wanted to do a bonfire, Willow mentioned, breaking the silence. I took a break and another swig of alcohol. And what's with this Wiccan thing? Still trying to piss off his Catholic dad? Fuck if I know. She shook her head. Honestly, no clue. You'd think he'd be past this whole rebelling against daddy thing. Willow shrugged and crossed her arms, bracing against the cold chill of dusk. I laughed. Honestly, I think it's just an excuse to party more. I mean, I'm not mad about it. I love this witchy, spooky fairy vibe. I sighed. Can't we just run off into the woods and leave our jobs and bills to the mere mortals? Willow grinned. Fuck yes! But anyhow, I continued. According to him, we're celebrating Beltane. Feigning a serious Jude tone, I added, and fire is absolutely mandatory. Willow continued my impression. Fire is like my element. It's creative but destructive and like so powerful. That is so him. We cracked up and I shoved at her jovially. Catching my breath, I added, I won't lie though. It's one of the things I love about him. Whatever he's into, however fleeting, he's all in. And passionate as hell. Willow glanced back at me hesitantly but clearly curious. Are you and Jay? We're whatever, I answered noncommittally. I don't know. We're nothing official or exclusive. My voice trailed as I looked away, my gaze drifting up and over the huge old-growth maples. Branches dipped in moss, reaching up toward the ever-darkening sky. Apparently, I finished muttering under my breath. Willow laughed, stealing the schnapps again. Monogamy is overrated, and so is Jay. I frowned, irritated by my sister's words. I reached for the bottle, grumbling. Give that back. Spinning just out of reach, Willow turned around and walked backwards in front of me. I will only give this back, she declared, gesturing dramatically with the bottle, if you promise to ignore the boys, or girls, or whoever, and have a fucking excellent Beltane with me. She held the bottle out in front of her, letting the liquid rock back and forth inside the glass. There's only a couple shots left. I rolled my eyes but smiled in spite of myself. Fine. I reached for the bottle again, but Willow pulled it out of reach. Willow stopped suddenly and I almost ran into her. Promise me, Willow urged, her voice low and suddenly serious. Her eyes were wide and looked a little wild, like an animal the moment before they make a flight or fight decision. I frowned. Stop being weird. I promise, okay? Grinning, Willow tossed the bottle at me. She spun on her heel, continued down the trail. I shook my head laughing and followed her. Sorry about my brother, the guy across from me apologized. He thinks he's Skrillex or something. He handed me the end of a hookah hose. I took it, inhaling the thick smoke, molasses and roses mixed with marijuana. He went to Electric Forest once, and he's been doing this. He gestured vaguely around them. Monthly ever since. His hair was dyed a vibrant cobalt, the top braided while the underside was cut short. He glanced over his shoulder, and I saw that the braid went halfway down his back. Prosthetic costume horns curled out from his head, black with veins of blue that matched his hair. I realized I was staring and looked around at the people milling around us. I wasn't sure where Willow had gone. I love it, I said, a little distracted. It wasn't a lie. I took another hit from the hookah and handed it back, leaning against the tree behind me. He's not half bad, and his lightning rig is seriously sick. He nodded slowly. It's all right, he acknowledged. I'm Zane, by the way. Alex, I sighed. Such a perfect night. The week just sucked, you know? My boss has been on top of me about everything. Customers have been literally the worst, and my coworkers are useless when they show up. I exhaled slowly. I really needed this. I paused, realized I'd been rambling. Ah, shit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overshare, I added, turning to him. He was gone. I looked around, but I was alone, sitting under a cluster of trees at the edge of the party. The forest above was alive with light and color, moving and shifting with music. If I stared long enough, my eyes would focus just a little, and I could almost see the branches moving and weaving through the canopy. I blinked, and the branches were still again. Something darted in the corner of my vision, and I turned to see what it was, but saw nothing. I leaned back against a tree and looked back up to the canopy. The colors seemed to sparkle and shine as they shifted color, and I reached out, trying to catch a piece of the glitter in my hand. It slipped away and blinked out of existence. The world was a kaleidoscope of color and leaves and heavy bass beats. I moved among other dancers, the beat a pulse that moved them all as one, an ocean rising and falling. I reached my hands above my head, watching the light that trailed from my fingertips. There was a delay, so it was almost like I was seeing an echo of where my hand had been as I was moving it. The beat began to pick up, and I could feel the energy of the crowd rising, impatient and waiting for the bass to drop. When it finally did, it was like a dam of light and sound and emotion was released. I tipped my head back, staring up at the sky and the colorful canopy above me. I felt connected with everything around me. Trails of glittery light sparkled all around me, and I reached for them as they moved overhead, but they flickered out just before I could touch them. There was a palpable feeling of magic in the air, and I submitted to it, closing my eyes and welcoming the otherworldly vibes. Finally, I broke away from the crowd, half coherently, searching for the cooler full of water bottles I had spotted earlier. I stumbled over a couple under a blanket and hastily apologized while deliberately trying not to look at them. Once I was a few yards away, I started giggling. Hey, are you okay? Willow asked from just behind me. I spun and saw Jay. Oh, I frowned, tilting my head in confusion. I thought you were... Never mind. I shook my head, feeling foggy. You okay? Jay asked, reaching out to steady me. His hand felt electric on my shoulder, but I tried to ignore the feeling. Yeah, sorry. I'm fine, really. My cheeks burned, but I hoped the lights disguised it. I took in his outfit. He had just as a punk, fucked-up Peter Pan, pointed ears and all. Are you a lost boy? He only grinned impishly. It suits you, I admitted. I'm glad you made it, he offered, and his eyes held my gaze for a long, intense moment. He finally looked away, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out slowly, the world feeling unstable and fragile beneath my feet. Hey, I found you. A voice came from behind Jay. He turned and wrapped an arm around the guy from the hookah earlier, saying, their lips met and they kissed, quick but passionate. Oh. Jay turned to me, keeping an arm wrapped around Zane. Have you met Zane? Yeah, earlier. Hey, I said, nodding to him. I'm either too wasted for the situation or not wasted enough. My vision was no longer a kaleidoscope, but it felt like there was fogs behind my eyes. I was just on my way to find some water, I get out, excuses jumbling in my head. And have you seen Willow? I've been trying to find her. I trail off, looking around for her again. I think I saw her by the bonfire, Jay offered. Which way is that? I asked, looking around. The lights were beautiful, yes, but they made the forest disoriented. We'll take you, Jay insisted, linking his arm in mine. M'lady. Zane added, bowing and offering his arm. How in the hell did you find this place, Jay? I asked, staring up at the canopy as we went down the path. Zane scoffed. Jay didn't find shit. Fuck you, Jay retorted, but he laughed. My brother is a park ranger, Zane told me. He's stationed here right now, and there's nobody allowed overnight. Except us, he grinned. Sweetest perk of being related to a nerd. I spun as I walked, enjoying the dizzying feeling, keeping my eyes on the sky as I turned. Jay laughed again and took a swig from the flask. You, my good sir, are a nerd. Jay coughed, his second swig spraying something noxious. It smelled like licorice and rubbing alcohol. I'm not, he choked out. Zane laughed, reaching into his pocket. Guess what I brought? He trailed off, his amber eyes glinting into the pulling out his Ziploc bag. You fucking have it, Jay got out, still coughing a little. Mushrooms, Zane said in a perfect Billy Boyd impression. I laughed at their ridiculous antics, but shook my head. I don't know, my head is still kind of spinning from the hookah, I admitted. Zane spun, his long black coat flying out from his body as he moved, putting his hands on his lips playfully as he blocked our way forward. Time to take your medicine, my dear, he teased, a grin on his face. My vision spun for a moment and I closed my eyes. Time to take your medicine, dear. The voice was soft and feminine. There was a low hum and a steady beeping, almost mechanical. I felt a wave of warmth and calm. The sounds faded and I opened my eyes. I leaned back against Jay comfortably, my head resting on his chest. I could hear the steady thump on his heartbeat beneath my head. My vision was a kaleidoscope again, lights and trees and trails of glitter. A shortcut, I giggled. I heard Willow laugh. I turned my head and saw her lying next to me, weaving daisies into a chain. A large wool blanket was spread out under us. Zane was lying with his head in my lap, looking up at the sky. As I looked around, I realized we were in a clearing, further from the music and the crowd. I followed Zane's gaze upward and watched as galaxies shifted and shooting stars traced Celtic knots in the night sky. Zane shifted a little as he moved, light glinted against his horns. I traced the lines of them, mesmerized. They were cold and felt almost like marble or granite under my fingertips. They look so real, I murmured, not really speaking to anyone in particular. I reached where they met his hair and expected to find something underneath, a clip, glue, some structure to keep them in place, and found nothing. My heart raced and I looked back to Willow. This is a bad trip. Try not to lose it. Everything's okay. Stay calm. The more you panic, the more you hallucinate. Willow? She turned sharply to look at me, recognizing the panic in my voice. There was something off, something different. Something's wrong, I managed to get out. Willow glanced at Jay and then back to me, and it hit me. It was her eyes. Her eyes were green, unnaturally so, her pupils elongated like a cat's. Alex, what is it? She blinked and they were normal. My breath caught into my throat and I could feel my heart trying to pound its way out of my chest. Alex? Jay asked, his voice loud, so close to my head. I jumped and pushed myself away from him, scrambling off the blanket. My limbs felt heavy and I didn't dare stand. The three of them moved toward me and I screamed, holding my hands out in front of me. Willow glanced from Jay to Zane, then back to me. She looked genuinely concerned. Alex, honey, it's okay. It's just me. She edged forward cautiously, afraid of spooking me. It's Willow, she assured, touching her hand to her heart. It's your sister. 3 words, and it all fell apart. My breath caught in my throat, and I started shaking my head. No, 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 no. Alex? Her brows creased and she reached for me. My words were barely a whisper. I don't have a sister. Willow stared at me for a long moment. She blinked and her eyes shifted back to feline. The three of them moved toward me again and I screamed, squeezing my eyes shut. The beeping returned, slow and steady. If I listened carefully, I could hear other beeps from further away, just as rhythmic, just as steady. I tried to wiggle my toes and fingers, but my limbs were lead. The sound of soft footsteps caught my attention, and I stopped trying to move. The footsteps approached me, and I heard papers rustling from my head. Another one? The voice muttered, irritated. Fucking dime a dozen here, aren't you? I heard it pop, and then the slow squeak of rubber against plastic. Dream on, little dreamer. A sweet, thick drink passed my lips. Tasting of berries and spices. It warmed me and I blinked my eyes open. Willow held the goblet. Drink, she encouraged. I had thought passed through my mind that I should be scared. I wasn't. I sipped more, becoming more aware of my surroundings. We were still in the blanket in the clearing. Jay was behind me again, my head against his chest, propping me up. I turned, looking up at him. When are we going to the bonfire? I asked daftly, my head still muddled. He smiled, his teeth sharp and pointed. Soon, he whispered. I reached up, feeling the point of his ears. It was warm beneath my touch. Are you ready? Zane asked. I turned toward him and my vision blurred. I blinked, trying to bring him into focus. Ready? The meat made my head swim, my thoughts slow and thick like honey. You are my belting sacrifice, darling. He purred, his fingertips trailing down my cheek. My brows furrowed and I frowned. Who are you? I managed slowly. He leaned in, his face next to mine. His mouth curled and there was a glint in his eyes. I'm Bill. The whites of his eyes bled to black, leaving the amber irises to look like embers. I felt it finally. Fear. They used to call me Beltine. Many years ago, a festival for the fire god. My heart began to race, and under the numbing effect of the need, I felt panic. Beltane is mine. He leaned in, kissing my cheek. And so are you. I felt tears and shut my eyes tight. There were more voices now, hushed whispers and footsteps moving around me, and still the ever-present steady beeping. It is imperative that we keep as quiet as possible around the inmates. He cleared his throat. Around the patients. The man corrected himself. The simulation therapy is nearly indistinguishable from reality, but occasionally there can be sensory input that bleeds over. It's our job to keep that to a minimum. There's a chart at the head of each patient's bed. Most background information you'll need is here. He paused and I could hear papers rustling. This is Alex Nagan, patient number WA2071. The patient was admitted 2 months ago after a report from a neighbor. She's classified as an ADSA patient. That's anxiety, depression, substance abuse. These are your most common cases here at the Northwest Center for Neurological Care. A quieter voice spoke up. Are they dangerous? The first man laughed. Absolutely not. For the safety of both the patients and the staff, we administer a proprietary paralytic amnesiac sedative every 2 to 4 hours, dependent on patient needs. Any patient in our care, no matter their level of neurodiversity. He said the word as if it was dirty and cleared his throat. Is fully and completely involuntarily incapacitated, as outlined in the DSM-7 and required by law. The papers were returned to their place above my head. Let's move on, he directed, leading the group away from me. Words and phrases kept bombarding me as I tried to process what the man had been saying. Neurodiversity, incapacitated, a report from a neighbor, amnesiastic, does that mean amnesia? I tried to remember something, anything, from before this moment in time, before waking up here, before the Beltane celebration. It was a blank. There was nothing. My heart started pounding as my panic rose. Did I have parents, a life, a job? I can't remember. I can't fucking remember. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find my voice. I felt hot tears fall down from the corners of my eyes. Did you adjust 2071 sensory output? I've had a dulcer extra twice today. The voice sounded like it was coming from a room behind me. Yeah, I was about to check that one. There was a sudden loud sound of a drink being sucked through a straw. I don't know how I'm gonna make it through the rest of the shift. Kevin just dumped 12 new inmates on me. There was that word again, inmate. Damn it, 2232's BP just spiked again. Hold on, one sec. Footsteps moved toward me, and I heard the familiar pop and plunger squeak of what I could only assume was a syringe. My eyes opened as I felt the warmth rush through me again. Willow pressed the goblet up to my mouth, and I drank deep. I caught her eyes and slowly shook my head. This isn't real, I told her. My speech was slow, my words heavy. Willow stroked my hair, brushing it out of my face. She was sitting to my left and Belle to my right. It's okay, Alex. It's just a bad trip. It'll all be over soon. My brows knitted, trying to understand. It's not real? You just had too much. You're too much, Belle whispered, leering at me. Drink, Willow instructed, pushing the goblet toward me again. She tipped it back and the last of the liquid passed my lips. I looked at Belle. Too much? He leaned close to me. Hold out your arm. I lifted it, and it felt somehow both weightless and heavier than it had ever been. He slowly traced his fingertips down the inside of my forearm, and I gasped as trails of fire appeared on my skin. They were hot, but didn't burn me. You experienced too much. You hurt too much. You stress and ache and love and feel. He paused, catching my gaze. His irises burned bright amber, and I couldn't look away from them. You are passion. You are fire. You will burn up and burn them with you if I don't take you first. My skin felt hot, like the beginning of a sunburn. I looked down and saw the flames that spread from my forearm to the rest of my torso, and they were climbing down and across my dress. Beneath the numbing warmth of me, panic was rising again. I forced myself to sit up even as the world swam around me. I blinked furiously, trying to come to my senses. My face flushed with heat, and I felt confused and feverish. I stood, and the flames grew brighter, their tendrils dancing and leaping around me. The tendrils grew blazing with a flash of white, and I screamed as I was engulfed in a tower of flames. Damn it, Jerry! I asked you to fix the sensory output. The nurse whispered angrily. Monitors beeped loud and erratically. You have to fix it now, fuck! Ah, shit, hold on. There was a furious typing and clicking as Jerry tried to fix the setting. Is it done? We have to call a call or we're going to lose her. Seriously, Martha, I'm gonna lose my fucking job. Just fix it and I'll delete the log. Jesus Christ, Jerry. Okay, fuck. It's done. Call it. So now we are on our last story, which is for the month of October. And this one is by Christy Gromberg. Long, thin fingers appeared to caress the full moon. As the clouds passed by, they cast narrow patches of shadow upon the earth below, where 7 costumed figures gathered outside of the gated entrance to the Mallory Family Memorial Cemetery. 2 were perched side by side on the hood of a muscle car, and another 5 stood nearby while they watched and waited for the pair of latecomers to arrive. Andrew and Madison eventually turned up in matching baseball outfits, Andrew in white, Madison pretty in pink. Her artificially blonde locks and flared skirts swayed in this crisp autumnal breeze. She held a plastic baseball bat over her shoulder in one hand, while he held a case of beer in each of his. They approached the group together, grinning. "Who's ready to get wasted?" Andrew hollered. Emily, who was dressed as a doctor, crossed her arms over her blue scrubs. "What took you so long?" she demanded to know. "The Thorns are only a 10-minute drive from here. We thought you'd have bailed on us." "No, just got a little sidetracked is all," Madison explained with a guilty smile. Her gaze dropped to the ground, then slid sideways to climb up Andrew's lean body. "By which she means we were busy getting to third base," he boasted. Madison giggled and blushed with mock embarrassment while he smirked. The sexy nurse of the group, Emma, grimaced. Her cherry red lips thinned. Jacob sighed loudly through his vampire fangs. "Whatever. Can we just get on with it?" Michael checked his analog watch and nodded. "Yeah, if we're going to do this, we should do it now. It's almost midnight," he remarked. The humble newsboy did not appear thrilled, but the beaming flower child at his side seemed excited enough for both of them. "Thanks again for coming with me," Hannah said sweetly. "Of course," Michael replied with a tight smile. Wait, no, that was yesterday. "Of course," Michael replied with a tight smile. Emily started towards the heavy iron gate. "I want it on record that I think this is stupid," she announced even as she led the way. "But whatever, let's get it over with." Emma leapt up from where they had been sitting on the car and sprinted to catch up. Hey, what's the big deal? I told you you didn't have to do this. Andrew chuckled. Looks like the M's are gonna have a cat fight. That'll be hot. Wait, no, Andrew's shit. Looks like the M's are gonna have a cat fight. That'll be hot. Madison scoffed. Not as hard as it would be if I was in it. True. Andrew and Jacob agreed in unison. Hannah rolled her eyes, soliciting a sympathetic smile from Michael. Emma frowned at Emily. Do you want to wait in the car? She suggested. Emily shook her head, her dark ponytail wagging behind her shoulders. No, it's fine, she said grudgingly. I'm not letting you do this alone with them. Let's go. Emma seemed unconvinced, but didn't press the issue any further. Okay. Andrew handed off the beer to Jacob, and Michael then walked back to his car to repair bolt cutters. The M stepped aside as he approached the locked gate with Madison at his side. She squealed with glee as the padlock snapped under pressure. Andrew then pushed open the heavy iron gate with relative ease. It swung inward soundlessly, disappointing those who had anticipated the shriek of old hinges. Lame, Jacob muttered under his breath. So sorry to disappoint. A smooth masculine voice called out in answer, adding, But I do take great pride in my work here. The group startled, swearing and casting furtive glances around. Emily spotted the stranger first. He walked towards them at a relaxed pace, careful not to step on any of the flat or low-laying grave markers in his path. Even at a distance, he was clearly handsome. His skin was flawless, his features and his eyes as sharp as his perfectly tailored black suit. Not a single strand of his dark hair stood out of place. He came to a halt about 10 feet away, where he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the group with apparent curiosity. Who the hell are you? Andrew asked, in a bit louder than necessary. The stranger chuckled. Keep your voice down, will you? You'll wake the dead. Emily grabbed Emma by the forearm and backed her way towards what should have been the still open gate, but she bumped into the iron bars. The padlock rattled on the other side. Leaving so soon? The man asked. There was a panicked chorus of what the hells and the fucks, and the assembled students realized the gates had somehow closed behind them. They were trapped. The stranger's smile broadened. You wanted to come in, didn't you? I'll show you around. All I ask is that you treat this place on this residence with respect. Dear. Emily spoke up. Look, we won't cause any more trouble. Just let us go. The man's grin faltered with mock sadness. Would that I could, he said. But as you well know, the gates are locked from the other side. They won't open again until morning. Are you a ghost? Anna asked him, her doe eyes wide and fearful. He laughed. No, you won't find any ghost here. Just me and the residents. They're not a very lively bunch, but I don't mind. It's the living that are bothersome. What is the reason for your visit? Emily shook her head. We're not telling you anything until you tell us who you are. The man shrugged. Very well, he agreed. I'm the caretaker of the cemetery. You may call me Nephi. And you are? As the question left his lips, Nephi's eyes burned with a sudden intensity. His gaze bore into each of the young adults in turn, drawing their names from their very heavy lungs. Andrew. Madison. Jacob. Emma. Michael. Hannah. Emily. Nephil nodded, satisfied. Good, now that the introduction's out as you were. Why don't you tell me why you're here? Andrew cleared his throat nervously. We came to see spooky shit and get wasted. Maybe have sex in the crypt or something, he muttered. The caretaker sighed. You've come to the wrong place for that, I'm afraid. There are no crypts in the cemetery, and anyways, I won't allow any fornication here. It's disrespectful. Hannah nodded. We should always show respect to the dead, she agreed in a soft voice. They deserve to be at peace. Nephil raised an eyebrow at her. Deserve? I don't know about that. No one here was a saint in life. I abhor these thoughts, frankly. It's simply my job to protect them. But they're already dead. Jacob scoffed. Your point? Nephil asked. Jacob laughed. My point is there is no point. Dead people don't need protection. Neffel pursed his lips and studied Jacob, looking thoughtful. What about the undead? If Jacob's powder-white face could pale any further, it would have in that moment. Andrew's gaze narrowed as he took a step forward. Hey man, that's not funny. Behind him, the others clustered closer together. Hannah clung to Michael's arms. Neffel unclasped his hand and held him up with a disarming smile. I'm no great comedian, it's true. I am an excellent tour guide, however. You came to see something here, isn't that right? I think the children's resting place would be to your liking. Right this way. And with that, the caretaker put his hand in his pocket, turned away from the group, and began walking up the gently sloping hill opposite the iron gate. Can you believe this guy? Andrew sneered at his back. Should we follow him? Hannah asked, looking up into Michael's face. He grimaced. I don't think so. We should call someone for help. No way, Emma cut in. We're trespassing right now. We'll get arrested for sure. Better than being murdered by that fancy creep, Jacob pointed out. Something tells me that if we die here, he won't protect us. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Michael pulled out his phone and attempted to turn on the screen, but it remained dark. That's weird, he remembered. I charged my phone before we left. It shouldn't be dead. Their brows furrowing, each pulled out their own phone to find them unresponsive. Fuck, Andrew shouted. They're all fucking dead. What the hell? So, what do we do now? Hannah asked, looking to Emily for an answer. We should wait here until the morning, she said. At least here, we're together, we're visible from the parking lot, and we're away from that guy. It's the safest place for us. Michael, Hannah, and Emma agreed. Madison, however, did not. Look, she said, if you guys are afraid of a sexy caretaker, you do you, and waste the whole night sitting on your asses next to this damn gate. But we came here to be a little scared and get a little drunk, so I say we should take our shit up the hill and go check out the creepy kids' graves. We have hours to kill. Otherwise, we have hours to kill. Otherwise, and apparently having sex is off the table, so we might as well go on the spooky tour. Right, Andrew? He cocked his head to the side and flashed her a mischievous grin. I mean, sure, he agreed offhandedly. But is having sex really of the... It is. Neffel cut Andrew off, his tone firm. He was nowhere to be seen, having neither paused nor slowed his pace, yet his voice rang out as nearly as if he still stood nearby. The group exchanged nervous, wide-eyed glances. Come on, then, Neffel added. The lady wants to see the sights. Don't keep her waiting, lover boy. Andrew's mouth twisted in displeasure. Fine, let's go. Madison took his hand, and together they began walking up the hill in the direction of Neffel's voice. Jacob shrugged and started after them. The remaining four hesitated. Emily stared at their retreating figures. Let him go, she muttered. They're idiots. Hannah's forehead creased with concern. Maybe, but is it worth splitting up? She asked. Shouldn't we stick together? Safety in numbers and all that. Besides, what if they get into trouble and we're not there to help them? Emma nodded. Yeah, and we can't just leave them. They are leaving us, Emily snapped. That's their decision to make. If they get into trouble, well, that's their own fault. They're the reason we're in this mess anyway. Breaking in here was their dumbass idea. Emma grimaced. If you hate them so much, why'd you come? She asked. The M's locked eyes, sudden tension snapping in the air between them like electricity. Because you're my best friend and you're here, Emily explained matter-of-factly. I thought you'd need me, and it looks like I was right. Emma's face fell, then hardened. I can take care of myself, she said bitterly, crossing her arms over her chest and meeting Emily. You don't have to save me. Emily recoiled as she'd been slapped in the face, her own arms dropped to her side. You know I don't mean it like that, she insisted. Don't tell me what I know and what I don't, Emma snapped. You're always doing that. I can think for myself, okay? I'm not a moron. But since you obviously think I am, I might as well join the other people you've decided are idiots. Emma turned away in disgust and started up the hill. Jacob turned to her with a soft smile as she caught up to him. She took his hand, but her gaze lingered on Andrew. Emily put her hands on her head and sighed, exasperated. I have to go after her, she told Michael and Hannah. Are you staying here or coming with me? Hannah looked up to Michael, her dark eyes wide and pleading. We can't stay here by ourselves, she said. We'll be safer in a big group. All right, Michael agreed, though doubt shone in his eyes. We'll stay together. The group passed through row upon row of graves as they climbed the hill in search of Neville. Each grave was remarkably well kept. The headstones were free from dirt, the earth from weeds, and every shrubbery, every blade of grass was trimmed just so. Yet an air of abandonment hung about the place all the same. Not a single headstone was adorned with flowers, gifts, carvings, and even an epitaph. Each bore only a name and the dates of the individual's birth and death. Everything was simple, sterile, detached. This place is so creepy, Hannah whispered to Michael. It's certainly weird, he agreed quietly. Something feels really off here. They found Ethel at the top of the hill, sitting cross-legged on the edge of a dried-up fountain. He received his visitors with a smug smile. Welcome to the heart and soul of the Mallory Family Memorial Cemetery, he greeted them. Say hello to little Abigail if you like. He gestured to the nearest grave. The headstone read, Abigail Mallory, March 23, 1913 to October 26, 1925. Unlike every other headstone, Abigail's was decorated with a simple carving. It depicted a crowned princess dancing through a field of daisies. The art style was that of a child's drawing. Are you familiar with the Mallory family? Neville asked the costumed youth. They shrugged and shook their heads. Neville hissed at them. You didn't do your homework before coming here? Not even you, Doctor. He directed the question at Emily, who shifted uncomfortably where she stood. The well-dressed caretaker sighed and crossed his legs and rose to his feet. The well-dressed caretaker sighed and crossed his legs and rose to his feet. He walked over to Abigail's grave and stood behind her headstone, placing a hand upon it before returning his attention back to the group. Who here would like to hear the story of the Mallory family tragedy? He asked. Hannah's brow furrowed. Is it a ghost story? She wondered aloud. Neville shook his head. No, but it is one of suffering, sacrifice, and death. Jacob snorted. I mean, that makes sense, considering she's dead, he sneered. The caretaker regarded him with a cold, deadpan expression. If only you were so lucky, he said darkly. Andrew turned to Jacob. Honestly, dude, even if I'm getting sick of your bullshit, he confessed, shut the hell up, alright? I want to hear about this dead girl. Me too, Madison chimed in. A crooked grin twisted Neffle's handsome features. Good. How did she die? Hannah asked. Her gaze was fixed on the little stone princess. Enos, Neffle answered. She was born sick, you see. There was nothing that could be done for her. The family doctor expected she would die by the age of 6. It was heartbreaking news for her parents, to be sure. They were forced to watch their daughter live in suffering, knowing her every dream for the future was doomed. There's no greater torment for a parent. I would know. Madison's brow rose in surprise. Wait, are you a dad? She asked, mouth agape. Neffle chuckled. No. Emily narrowed her eyes at him. Then how would you know? The caretaker ignored her question. Growing up, Abigail was often confined to her bed, but even on her earliest days, she remained hopeful and kind-hearted. She spent most of her free time drawing cute little pictures like this one. Nearly everyone adored her. What do you mean, nearly everyone? Emily asked. I'm getting there, Neffle assured her. Abigail's family saw to her every need and treated her each day as if it might be her last. Her father, in particular, went above and beyond to bring a smile to her face. He was a tinker and repairman, specializing in clocks and watches. His skills allowed him to create wondrous clockwork toys for Abigail. Her favorite of his creations was a simple, beautiful music box. Its sweet melody was a comfort to her. She loved to watch the clockwork princess inside twirl around and around and around. Neville drew circles in the air with his index finger for emphasis. She listened to the music box's song at least once every day, he continued, dancing with the princess when she was well enough to do so and falling asleep to the familiar clicking, twinkling sounds when she was at her weakest. Abigail did not want to die, but she was aware of death, as all felt she did now on some level. and she felt that it would not be so scary with the music to guide her when the time came. Now to answer your earlier question, Doctor, young Abigail had another sister. Her name was Molly. She had been a happy, darling child until Abigail was born. Then Molly was all but forgotten as her loved ones gave their full, undivided attention to her ailing sister. Molly was forced to grow up too soon, caring for herself and her sister by the time she was 8. She grew increasingly resentful towards Abigail and envious of her thoughtfully crafted toys. After all, there is After all, they represented their father's love and adoration, which it seemed Molly would never know again. One night when Abigail was asleep, Molly crept into her sister's room and stole her beloved music box. In a fit of jealous rage, she smashed it into 1,000 pieces, give or take. Hannah's eyes brimmed with tears. "That's terrible," she said. Neville nodded. Indeed, Abigail was distraught. She didn't understand why her sister had destroyed her most prized possession. Fortunately, their father was able to fashion something new from the remains of the music box. A clockwork princess doll. It did not produce the sweet melody Abigail treasured, but she loved it anyways. She liked to pretend that it was her sister, kinder and more playful than the one she had. Molly hated the new doll, of course, but she took pleasure in the fact that she had silenced the familiar music. No longer was she tormented by it, but to Molly's great frustration, Mr. Mallory promised little Abby that he would make her a new music box. It was, however, a promise she could not keep. Abigail's health once again took a turn for the worse. It seemed as if she was truly on her deathbed this time. She was 6 years old, but as you can see, she lived to be 12. The Mallory family was instead struck by a tragedy they weren't expecting. Mr. Mallory died at his workbench in the middle of the night. The cause appeared to be a sudden heart attack. His wife and children were devastated. Hannah whimpered softly. Neville's gaze flicked sideways to meet hers. He regarded her with a soft, sympathetic smile. Abigail's loved ones feared that the loss of her father would rob her of her waning strength, he continued solemnly, but her body only grew stronger in the days following his passing. Her mother believed it was a miracle enacted mercy by God himself. Neville's mouth twisted in disgust. I can assure you, however, that it was not. Hannah cocked her head to the side, confused. Are you an atheist? She asked. Neville laughed. No. Emily frowned. How do you know so much about Abigail and her family? The caretaker flashed her a coy smile. That's a story for another time, he answered. Let's finish this one first, shall we? The group agreed. Wonderful, Neville exclaimed. We're getting to the good part now. He cleared his throat before continuing. After Abigail's miraculous recovery, 10-year-old Molly grew increasingly wild and violent, driven by both grief and resentment. The older girl lashed out at everyone and everything around her. She screamed profanities at her family, told them she hated them, that she wished they were dead like her father. More of Abigail's belongings turned up broken or went missing. But, try as she might, Molly was never able to get her hands on Abby's little clockwork princess. They were inseparable, Abigail and her doll. Moreover, the girl's mother was fiercely protective of Abigail, more so than ever before. Mrs. Mallory had always been gentle, if distant, but her husband's death changed her. She was quick to punish her firstborn for her childish outbursts, all the while accusing the girl of being selfish and ungrateful for God's mercy. Molly's body bruised and thinned, but her spirit remained unbroken. She could not be controlled. In fact, the abuse she endured only served to fuel her anger. Michael spoke up for the first time in many minutes. She didn't... What's the wrong word? She didn't kill her sister, did she? He asked. His youthful face was lined with genuine concern. Neville shook his head. No, she don't. Though I believe she would have if given the chance. But she never got the opportunity. You see, strange events began happening in the family home after the death of Mr. Mallory. The clocks he'd built no longer kept the time. Molly noticed them tick louder and more rapidly, or cease ticking altogether, whenever she neared. Moreover, both children began to see a dark figure in their home. They referred to him as the Shadow Man. Abigail spoke of him fondly as though he was an old family friend. She claimed that he was always watching her. He kept her safe, she said, but Molly was not so sure. The shadow man gave her a bad feeling. She caught glimpses of him out of the corner of her eyes, as well as in reflections, and she felt his presence whenever she was alone with Abigail. He visited Molly in her dreams and nightmares too, warning her not to disrespect or harm Abigail. But she would not listen. So what happened to her? Andrew asked. He and his friends hung on Ethel's every word now, enraptured by the dark tale he wove for them. There was something hypnotizing about the way he talked. He directed the story as if it was an orchestra, choosing and delivering his words with the utmost care. A long moment passed as the tension built to a crescendo. One night, Molly was drawn from a slumber by a familiar melody, one she thought she'd silence forever. Yet it rang out clearly in the darkness. It was a song which had belonged to Abigail's music box. Molly peered into the darkness, her eyes wide with fear. She sat up in bed, and with trembling fingers she reached over to a bedside table for her box of matches. It took her several attempts to successfully light one. The small, quivering flame cast an uncertain light throughout Molly's bedroom. Her door clicked open, and a petite, shadowy figure stepped lightly into the room with a distinct metallic tapping sound which took it apart from the music. Molly squinted to see who it was, but the figure was just beyond the reach of the dim light. And so Molly turned back to her bedside table and moved to light her kerosene lamp. But the flame went out just before it could touch the wick, plunging the girl's room back into total darkness. Molly gasped and fumbled for another match. Meanwhile, the music slowed, growing louder and more distorted with each passing second. The tapping, too, continued. Tip, tap, tip, tap. Neville marched his fingertips over the top of Abigail's tombstone. Everyone else held their breath. When Molly finally managed to light the second match, the flame illuminated the tiny metal face of the clockwork princess. The doll cocked her head to one side and smiled serenely. Then the music stopped and Molly's heart along with it. The handsome caretaker froze and let his hand fall limp at his side. He turned to the group and smirked. Only then did they dare breathe again. A massive grin spread over Andrew's face. "Okay, that was awesome," he admitted. Madison, too, beamed with excitement. "Hell yeah," she agreed. Jacob nodded. "How'd you come up with that, man?" he asked Neville. The caretaker laughed. "It's true," he insisted and shrugged. "Of course, you don't have to believe me. I don't particularly expect you to." Emily shook her head in utter bewilderment. "You're so full of shit," she laughed. "Your story doesn't make any sense." Neville blinked and looked to her with a curious expression. "Care to explain?" he asked. For the first time that night, Emily smiled. "Sure. First of all, the supernatural stuff, it's all either bullshit or the result of mental illness. If it all started before the dad died and the mom became abusive, then it was probably just how the girls were processing their trauma. The funky clock, Shadow Man, and Murder Doll are all either purposefully made up by you or the girls, or they're just untreated hallucinations. My guess is you made it all up, though, because I don't think Abigail had a sister at all. Otherwise, why wouldn't the girls be buried together? This is the Mallory Family Memorial Cemetery, right?" As Emily opted a victorious posture, her friends glanced around the surrounding area in search of Molly's grave, which was, as Em had pointed out, noticeably absent. The caretaker's shoulders trembled with laughter. He raised his hands in surrender. "It's no wonder you're a doctor," he chuckled. "You're a very clever young woman." Emma turned to her best friend with an apologetic, proud smile. The chilling story and the now solved mystery seemed to have drained the tension from her. "Hell yeah, she is! Way to go, Emily!" she congratulated her friend. The M's high-fived each other in celebration. Neville let out a heavy sigh. "Well, now that you've heard my favorite story, it seems I've outlived my entertainment value," he confessed. "There's not much else to see here, and I've work to do. Why don't you make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the rest of your evening? Just keep it in your pants and clean up after yourselves. All right?" Without waiting for an answer, the well-dressed caretaker stuffed his hands back into his pockets and turned to leave. "Sure, man," Andrew called out after him. "Thanks for the awesome story." Neville continued on his way without a backwards glance. "No need to thank me," he replied, airily waving away the younger man's praise. "The pleasure is mine in telling it. I take pride in my work, as you'll recall." Emily raised an eyebrow at Andrew as Neville's retreating figure disappeared from view. You do realize he's probably the reason we're stuck here, right? She reminded him. Madison's eyes went right. Oh shit, that's right! I totally forgot about that. How the hell did he do that anyways? Michael pursed his lips. The gate could be automatic, he suggested. It opened pretty quietly. We might not have noticed it close behind us. Emily bit her lip and thought on that for a moment, then shook her head. No, that can't be right. The gate was locked from the outside. That Neville guy said so, and I remember seeing the padlock. It was hanging there on the outside like Andrew had never cut it, but he did. Madison scowled. Wait, I'm confused. Emma wore the same expression. Yeah, me too. And like our phones are all dead, Jacob put in. That's weird too. Andrew ran a hand through his hair. Shit, yeah. You're right, how did we forget that? Madison surveyed her peers with a you're all clueless expression. It's that Neville guy, obviously, she explained. He distracts us with his tight ass in that creepy ghost story. Was it really a ghost story, though? Hannah asked. We don't know if the Shadow Man was a ghost or that the doll was possessed by one. Who would the ghost even be? The dead dad, obviously, Jacob muttered in a condescending tone. Hannah turned on him, exasperated. Do you have to be such an asshole? She snapped. Do you have to be such a bitch? He retorted. Guys! Emily snapped. Focus. That dumbass story doesn't matter. We need to figure out what's really going on, right? Andrew shrugged. I mean, we probably got... excuse me, I'm sorry. Andrew shrugged. I mean, we're probably stuck here until morning either way, right? Why not just do what we came here to do? We've still got the beer and time to kill, don't we? Yo, Mike, what time is it anyways? Michael glanced down at his watch. It is 1:30, and my name is Michael. Madison smiled about her boyfriend, her rosy cheeks shining in the moonlight. I like the way you think, babe, she agreed with a seductive wink. Now that Neville's busy, we can get busy ourselves. I've always wanted to get freaky somewhere weird. A wolfish grin spread over Andrew's face. Hell yeah, let's do it! The couple kissed and grabbed a pair of beers and started walking away. Smart. So very smart. Jacob shrugged and moved to sit down on the edge of the fountain. God, those two are insufferable, Emily griped. But whatever, I'm going to go look around and see if I can't figure out what's going on here. Who's coming with me? Hannah and Michael exchanged a look, then nodded. We are. All eyes except Jacob's fell upon Emma. She hesitated. Hey guys, Jacob called out to gather attention. Speaking of looking around, guess what I just found? His white button-up shirt creased as he turned to peer into the fountain's bottommost basin. Though dry, it was not empty. The soft light of the moon revealed a small plastic bag containing colorful tablets. It glinted within the fountain like a tossed coin. Jacob picked it up between his fingers and held it out to the group, beaming with excitement. Oh shit, Emma gasped. Is that ecstasy? Jacob nodded. I think so. Only one way to find out, right? Emily held up her hands in a warning gesture. Whoa, 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 you can't take that. For one, you don't actually know what it is. But whatever it is, it probably belongs to Neville, she reasoned. Who knows what weird shit he's on? It could be dangerous. I mean, even if it is ecstasy, it could be contaminated and it's illegal as hell. Getting caught drunk or screwing in a private cemetery is one thing, but drug possession is a serious crime. So we won't get caught possessing it, Jacob reasoned. Once it's in our system, legally, I don't think the cops can do shit about it. But that means we're all gonna have to work together to get rid of it by morning. What you say, Emma? What one? His warm, inviting eyes sparkled with mischief as they fixed upon Emma. She blushed and smiled sheepishly. I don't know, Emily's right. It could be dangerous. Jacob shrugged. Suit yourself, he said. He then stood up and cupped his hands under his mouth. Hey, Andrew! Wait up! You're gonna want to see this. He started walking down the hill in the direction of Andrew and Madison. Emma pursed her painted lips and looked longingly after him, her forehead creased with indecision. Emily recognized the look and her expression hardened. Don't even think about it, Em. You know better. You know I'm right. Emma's features twisted with indignant anger. There you go again, telling me what to do like I'm some dumb child you're babysitting, she snarled. I'm an adult, Emily. I can make my own damn decisions. You can't stop me, so you better get used to it. Before Emily could respond, Emma turned on her heels and sprinted to catch up with Jacob and his friends. He turned to her with a smirk as she held out her hand. A pale yellow tablet fell from the plastic bag and onto her open palm. She turned back to face Emily. Then, making a show of popping the tablet into her mouth, Jacob grinned and kissed her neck, slowly working his way up to her mouth. When their lips parted, Jacob stuck his tongue out at Emily to reveal the remains of the yellow tablet. He laughed, as did Emma. Emily rolled her eyes and turned her back on them. She scoffed in disgust. Whatever, I just don't care anymore. She's right. She can make her own decisions and then deal with the consequences. I'm done trying to protect her. Let's just go. Michael and Hannah followed as she led the way through the cemetery. She walked through the aisles of headstones with purpose, keeping a keen eye out for other members of the Mallory family. They turned up nothing. Abigail was the only Mallory buried there. Didn't add up. The trio decided to return to the front gate. They were surprised to find it wide open, broken padlock laid on the ground nearby, exactly where it had fallen before. Emily hesitated, confused. But Hannah and Michael didn't care why the gate was open, only that they were free to leave. They sighed with relief and sprinted to the muscle car, which belonged to Hannah's older brother. She fumbled for the keys and unlocked it. Emily turned away and considered going back for Emma. Suddenly, Neville's voice rang out clearly, causing her to jump in surprise. Your friend shouldn't have stolen from me. But that wasn't their fatal mistake. It was a lack of respect for this place. They intended to trash and defile it. I cannot allow that. The soul they've sworn to protect must not be disturbed. That's the deal. Emily's gaze snapped back and forth as she tried to pin down the direction of Neville's voice. She found him standing in the shadows nearby, leaning against a portion of the brick wall connected to the iron gate. Where's Emma? What did you do to her? She demanded to know. Neville smiled. She's dying, but I can save her. For a price. What is it you want? I want your soul. But this will cost your life as well. You can give it to her. Every year you have left with my help. More than that, I can protect her in a way you never could. You can give her a good life, not show harm or disrespect to ever again. Whereas if you do nothing, she will die alongside the other three, doomed and afraid. As the muscle car came to life, twin beacons of light cut through the shadows. Hannah looked up from the ignition and peered through the windshield. Oh no, she whispered. Michael paused in the midst of climbing into the passenger seat. What's wrong? Michael pointed at the front gate. It's closed again. Michael, where's Emily? Andrew, Madison, and Jacob awoke to find themselves laying on the wooden floor of a dark room, their heads throbbed as they struggled to sit upright. What the hell? Madison? Andrew? Where are we? Guys, what's going on? The trio fell silent as tinkling music filled the room. Tinkling music filled the room. It was faint at first, then grew steadily louder. A soft, girlish voice sang along to the melody. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer to. As the words faded away, a series of other sounds took their place. Clicking, tapping, shifting fabric, finally a short, scraping sound like sandpaper. A small flame sparked to light. The match, held between a pair of small, bony fingers, illuminated the skeletal face of what appeared to be a preteen girl. Her eye sockets were empty as she stared into the darkness. Then she turned to regard her newest visitors. She smiled at them and giggled. The Shadow Man warned us, Molly chided the trio in a sing-song voice, and added in a harsh whisper, We should have listened. She held the match up to her thin, cracked lips and blew out the little flame, plunging the room into complete darkness once more. Emma came to hours later, rising with the morning sun. She looked for her friends, but they were nowhere to be seen. Yet she did not feel alone. Neville watched over her from a distance. He chuckled softly and turned to meet the gaze of an unseen observer. Who would you have me protect? He asked. And that is all of our stories for today's episode. However, if you want to read more of the awesome spooky tales from the Unnerving book, you can get it from Amazon, and there will be a link to that in the description. It's really awesome. Again, there's a story for every month, and they're holiday themed if that month has a big holiday. As for that, that's our show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. And remember, Halloween is all about just having fun and getting to be yourself for a day. So please go do that. Be kind to each other. Get a little scared. Eat way too much candy. And wear that thing that you've always wanted to wear.